Hi students, this is the 13 original colonies flipped video. And I want to go ahead and just kind of do a quick review of all the colonies. We've already been talking a lot about the settlements. We've talked the Jamestown from Virginia. We also talked Plymouth and Massachusetts Bay Colony, which is Massachusetts. I want to just review some of the other colonies we haven't had a chance to talk about. Starting with the New England colonies. The New England colonies, pretty much, in class we have talked about the fact that the New England colonies really had a cold climate, rocky soil. So pretty much they were subsistence crop growers, but also mostly trading, shipbuilding, and fishing is how they made their money and their economics. New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut are the colonies of New England. We've talked a lot about Rhode Island already, specifically Rhode Island being established by Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson. Both of them get kicked out of Massachusetts and start the colony of Rhode Island, which is a colony that welcomes all religion and is the most tolerant of all colonies. To finish out the New England colonies, let's talk Connecticut and New Hampshire real quick. Connecticut was established in 1636, and like Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson, a gentleman named Thomas Hooker was also pretty much upset about Massachusetts Bay. So in 1636, Thomas Hooker and some other Puritans who disagreed with Massachusetts' requirement of church membership for voting decided to leave Massachusetts and settle in what we know as Connecticut. Once they were there, they established a government, and they even wrote their own constitution. We call their constitution the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. And it was America's first written constitution. It created a democratic government with voting rights based on property ownership rather than religious beliefs. Another colony, just real quick, New Hampshire. New Hampshire was settled by Massachusetts originally, but it becomes its own colony in 1679. Moving into the middle colonies, really quick, the middle colonies are well known for their small farms and a lot warmer conditions and warmer temperature than New England. Their nickname is the bread colonies. They also had dairy as well, so they're known for bread and for dairy, grain growing, small farms. The temperature was a lot better than in New England. The middle colonies consist of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. Let's go ahead and start with New York. New York originally was a Dutch colony and was established by the Dutch, and they called it New Netherlands, actually. The Duke of York, James, the Duke of York, an English gentleman, wanted to take the colony from the Dutch. And so he sent 4 ships to New Netherlands to take over the colony. Now, the Dutch governor thought that the colonists would resist the English, but that's not exactly what happened. The Dutch settlers actually welcomed the English in, and so it was a pretty easy takeover. And so by 1664, the Dutch colony becomes an English colony, and they rename it after the Duke of York, New York. Another colony that we want to talk about is New Jersey. Now, New Jersey was also was originally owned by the Duke of York, and he gave land between the Hudson River and the Delaware River to 2 friends, John Berkeley and George Cartier, who named their colony New Jersey after the Isle of Jersey in England. And then eventually that too became a colony in 1664, granting people religious and political freedom. Now, another middle colony is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is extremely interesting because it was started by a proprietor in 1682, a man named William Penn. Now, William Penn was decided to establish a colony as a haven for Quakers, and a haven is a safe place. And in his colony, he wanted to have sort of religious freedom. He believed that all people had the inner light of God within them and that they were all equal, including women, blacks, and Indians. William Penn created a government, and his document was called Penn's Frames of Government. It guaranteed political and religious freedom and also provided economic opportunity for every male settler. Did receive about 50 acres of land. So Pennsylvania, specifically Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, Pennsylvania welcomed all people, including women, blacks, and Indians, into their colony. And we look at the picture, the painting right there. William Penn is in the middle of the painting, and he's got his arms wide open, signifying that everyone is welcome. The last colony for the Middle Colony is Delaware, and Delaware was established in 1682, originally owned by the Swedes, but then eventually taken over by the English as well. To finish us off, we want to talk about the Southern colonies. Well, the Southern colonies make up Maryland, Virginia, North and South Carolina, and Georgia. And one thing that the Southern colonies have in common is that they have really hot weather, drier weather, and it's really easier to grow crops, cash crops. They had large plantation that also needed lots of labor. Cash crops such as tobacco, which is the picture right up here, rice, indigo, and cotton eventually. Let's go ahead and start talking about the Southern colonies of Maryland. Maryland is established in 1634 by Lord Baltimore. Like Pennsylvania, it became a safe place or a haven for a religious group. Maryland was a haven for Catholics that were being persecuted in England. In Maryland, Lord Baltimore also wrote a document called Toleration Act of 1649, which actually was a religious document that gave freedom or liberty for all Christians. And again, Maryland became this haven or this safe place for people who worship Catholicism. Now, North and South Carolina was established in 1663. Again, by proprietors, their goal was to have a prosperous trade, specifically in rice, indigo, and silk and wine. They were heavily into importing enslaved Africans to work the plantations. And by 1710, blacks actually outnumbered whites in the colonies. Our last colony of the Southern colonies that we want to talk about is Georgia. Georgia was established in 1733 by a proprietor named James Oglethorpe. And him and a group of trustees acquired the land grant from King James II to establish Georgia as a haven for English debtors. A debtor is someone who owes money. And in England, when you owed money and you couldn't pay it, you would go to jail. So instead of having those people go to jail, they would send them to Georgia. The Georgia served as sort of a military barrier against Spanish Florida. It was the last colony within the 13 colonies and sort of became this buffer between Spanish and the English. In about 1752, their charter expired and it became a royal colony.